Hello. In this video I'm going to be demonstrating the installation of Ricochet skid plates on a Can Am X3 XRS. Now the first thing you need to do before you start your installation is to remove the stock skid plates here. Now, unfortunately, Can Am really likes their rivets, and so it makes it a bit of a chore just getting the stock stuff off. You're going to have to drill them all out, so pretty much anywhere you see a rivet on the bottom side of the machine, that rivet is going to have to be drilled out in order to get these stock skids off. So to get these off, you're just going to get a drill. Use a drill bit probably anywhere between 1/4 inch and 3/16, and just start drilling. Unfortunately, they also tend to spin too. So if you're going through and you get a rivet that starts to spin on you, probably the easiest way to do it to keep it from spinning is to get a screwdriver and kind of drive it underneath it if you can. There we are. And that'll stop the rivet from spinning and let you continue drilling. So there's one. Like I say, there's probably 50 or so, so it's a bit of a chore just to get the skid plates off, but unfortunately it is what it is. So let's keep on drilling. Okay, now that you've got all your rivets drilled out and the stock plates off the machine, there's one more thing you need to do before you're ready to install the Ricochet skids. Is you're going to have little rivet nubs hanging down. I've already taken care of them on this, but after you've drilled off the head, you're going to have the body of the rivet that's going to hang down from the tube. Now we don't want that because that's going to throw the skid plate away from the frame. So is what I usually do. You can either get a cutoff wheel and you can just cut them off flush, or you can just take a hammer and a punch and just drive it back up into the frame just to get rid of those rivet nubs. Like I said, I've already taken care of that. I didn't demonstrate that in the video. I probably should have, but it's kind of pretty self-explanatory. Just make sure you get all the rivet nubs out of the frame so they're not hanging down, because that's going to push your skid plate away from the frame and kind of make your installation a little more difficult. So once you have all that done, you're actually ready to install the skids. On this machine, it's probably easiest to go from the rear to the front, just the way the overlap works and how all the hardware comes together. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to take the rear skid plate, and this is all going to mount with our tubing clamps and whatnot here. You want to put anti-seize on all of these bolts for all these clamps, all this hardware. You definitely want to put anti-seize on everything. So we're going to get the plate up into position. All the tubing clamps are the same size except for one. You got a smaller one that's going to go around this frame tube right here. I like to hang that one first. It's probably the easiest way to get the plate just into position and hung, rather than trying to do the ones on the side. So I would recommend starting with that little one right there first. This is a bit cumbersome. It might be easier with two people. You can do it with one, but two is probably a little easier. So we're just going to get the plate approximately in position. We'll be able to adjust everything after the fact. You can go through this access hole for the oil drain here and get that clamp around the bar. Get the plate lined up with the mounting slot and the plate lined up with the clamp, and just start that. Once you get that started, it'll just hang, and then you can go through and install the rest of the hardware. But like I say, it's probably a little bit easier to start that center one first, that smaller clamp there. And then the rest of the clamps are all these B clamps, the larger tubing clamps. And for these, you can just come in around the side of the frame, get it into position, and get the hardware started. And like I say, be sure to use anti-seize on all your bolts here. Now we're going to tighten anything at all for this set. We're going to actually mount all the plates, leaving all the hardware loose just to make sure we can get our adjustability all the plates adjusted for the best fit before we tighten anything down. Okay, so that's all of our clamps on. Now at this point, I'm just going to kind of make sure that this plate's squared, centered up left to right. Make sure this rear diff drain is lining up, and that looks all pretty good. So like I said, those are all the tubing clamps on. Then you got this kind of funky bracket right here. That's going to go up over here in this flattened part of this tube here. You can put this on later through the access hole. I find it's easier to put it on first and just come in through the top here, but it's doable either way. And again, like I say, we're just leaving all this stuff loose. Nothing's tight yet. So this can come in from the front, just slide over that bar and line it up with your slots. Once you get a bolt in there, you can leave it. It won't go anywhere. It's captured by the mounting slot. Okay, so that plate is loosely installed. So now we can move on to the next plate. Okay, so before you install this plate, it's probably easiest to hang these two clamps up on this bar first. There's some plastic here you kind of have to pry out just to get the clamp into position. There we go. There we go. Some machines are a little tighter than others. Okay, so now we can go ahead and take this plate and get it into position here. It's going to slide underneath your floorboard plastic. And then we can go ahead and install these cup washers. And you're also going to want to make sure that your clamps are going to line up with the slots. They're off a little bit, so like I say, that plastic can be a little bit tight, can hang you up a little bit. So like I say, if this clamp's kind of captured by that plastic, it doesn't really want to move. You can try and pry it up with a screwdriver and get it over. Sometimes that doesn't even work. You can kind of just knock it. Pretty close. Let's come over just a bit more. Okay, that side's looking pretty good. This side needs to come over just a hair also. And again, you're just looking for it to line up with the slot. So we're looking pretty good on both of those. Yep, that's nice and lined up, so we're good there. We're not going to install those bolts just yet though, because it's going to be, like I say, it's going to be a common mount with the next plate. So we're going to leave those bolts out for now. And then, like I said, we're also going to come back to these rear side clamps. I'll show that on the floorboards. So that means we're ready to install the next plate. One thing you need to do before that is there's a bolt up here on the floorboard plastic right as it kind of comes up and transitions. In fact, I'll just show you. It's this bolt right here that needs to come out. Mainly just so we can pull this floorboard plastic out to get the next plate slid underneath it. And then also this is going to be a mount for the floorboard skids as well. So go ahead and remove this bolt on both sides. And we also need to mount, you're going to mount 2 clamps on these bars right here. This one needs to mount before you get the plate on. Again, there's some plastic right here that's kind of against that tube. Some are tighter than others, but you're not going to be able to get this clamp in once you get the plate on. This side here is wide open, so you can just slide it through the access hole and you'll be good to go. But this one, you kind of need to get around the tube beforehand. It should just be in the center of the frame there. And before I slide this in and actually get it into position, slide it under these floorboard skids, I'm actually just going to hold it up and oh, that goes outboard, that's right. So you want to hold it up and locate, make sure that clamp's going to line up with your slot. And that's right, these clamps, they slide to the outboard side. That's not bad, it needs to come forward, it needs to come up. A little too far. Okay, that should be pretty good. Okay, so to get this mount or this plate into position, we're gonna do the exact same thing. We're gonna slide it underneath this floorboard plastic. Get it all the way over, and then you have to come over to the side and kind of pry it out and work it around the plate till the plate sets in. And at that point, you can just let it hang. It's good to go there. Still off a little bit on that clamp. The clamp on this side, like I say, it can just slide right in. It's not captured by that plastic. You can just come through, get it around the bar. Okay, so that started there. And this isn't too far off. Let's see if we can. There we go. Okay, now I've caught that thread. Okay, so now that they have this plate in position and these two clamps on, we need to get the clamps on the side installed. And you can actually access most of these actually just through the cab. So the very back one here, second to back. The only one you're not going to be able to is this very front one. Actually, you can get it around the tube and then slide it all the way forward. That's probably going to be the easiest way to do it. There we go. Okay, all those are roughly lined up there. Just come over to the other side and do the same thing. Yeah, this machine, they've got an aftermarket subwoofer in here, so that is making this a little tricky to get these clamps around these tubes here. There we go. One more. There we go. Okay. Now it's usually a little easier than that. This is really kind of a tricky set to install since they don't have any factory mounting points. Everything just moves and floats so much. It's really kind of hard to get everything aligned where everything needs to be and should be. So this is a little bit more of a difficult set to install than we usually try and have. Okay, so everything is installed loosely. All the clamps are in their approximate locations. Okay, that all looks pretty good. One thing we need to do before we tighten anything down is you're going to take your floorboard skid. Now this floorboard skid, if you order our hybrid set, which comes with the 1/4-inch UHMW overlay, that's already going to be pre-installed on the floorboard, and then these are all going to be common mounts of the floorboard here, 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 and here, those four there. So basically is what you're going to do, you're going to take your floorboard skid, set it up into position, make sure it's seated all the way back here, and just make sure things are lining up. And if they are, then that means the adjustment of your belly skids is pretty close. If you're off, then you're going to have to go through and adjust the belly skids to get everything to line up with the floorboard. Okay, that all looks pretty good. Okay, once you get one caught, the rest of it will go pretty easy. That first one's just real tricky to get caught. Like I say, it's going to be a lot easier if you have a buddy to help you out. All right, there's two. Okay, one more here. Okay, so that's all 4 of those started. And then again, before we tighten anything down, you're gonna wanna put in this front bolt here. Okay, so that's all the hardware started for the belly skids, the floorboard skids. So at this point, we can actually go through and tighten everything down. You know, you want to make sure that everything's pretty centered, square. I mean, it should be. If you really don't get it there in the first place, you're probably not going to get a lot of these bolts in and even started. So this is all looking pretty good. So we can just go ahead and, like I say, tighten everything down. This bracket back here, you're gonna wanna bring it all the way forward. So just reach your hand up through this slot, slide it all the way up. and then tighten it down. Okay, so that's everything tight except for the floorboards here. And when you do the floorboards, just kind of, push it in, make sure you get it up as tight to the body as possible, and then just tighten it down. And as you see, as I'm tightening it, it's pulling it in tight up against the skids here. When it's loose, it kind of pulls away, but it'll suck in when you get those bolts tightened up. Sucks. Okay, so we have one plate left to install to finish off the belly skid, and this plate does require some drilling. There's just absolutely nowhere to get any clamps or anything to mount to. So the first spot you're going to drill is going to be this hole in the back of the frame here. It only goes through one wall, so you're going to take about a 5/16 drill. Open that up and then just go through straight through the second wall. Okay, that takes care of that hole. Okay, so after you've drilled out this hole and through the second wall, there's 4 more spots you need to drill. And it's going to be where these rivets are. They've riveted this plate and then they've welded this plate. Again, Can Am loves their rivets. So basically you're just going to be drilling the rivets out with the drill bit that we've supplied. And you're just going to go all the way through. These actually have a little bit of the rivet nub left in them, which is going to not help your drill bit find center. And drive that in a little bit. we go. Okay. Okay, so all those are drilled out, and then you can take the tap that we're supplying, and you're going to cut a thread. You want to put a little bit of oil or WD-40 or some sort of lubricant on the tap, and we're just going to cut a thread. Now you want to make sure you get this tap in and keep it as straight as possible. Okay, now all those are tapped out. Now this machine is not stock. It has this winch mount on it. So as you can see, this plate doesn't quite fit. But if it was a stock machine, you got 2 factory bolts up here. You take those out, put our bolts in here. It's going to come up, bolt together. We modified the plate for this machine so it will fit. So that's how we're going to install it. But like I say, out of stock installation, you'd have 2 bolts up here. You'd pull those factory bolts out, pick up the mounts and the factory bolts, the 4 here, and then the nut and bolt going through the frame there. Okay, so now that those are tapped out, you can go ahead and just mount the plate. Like I say, on a stock installation, you'd have 2 mounts up here. We don't have that since this is got an aftermarket hitch on it, but everything else will be the same. Get the plate up into position. Those 4 bolts started. A bolt and then a washer and the nut on the rear. And then we just tighten everything down. Okay, that takes care of the belly skids. Okay, so as you can see, we've got all the belly skids on. Now, if you've purchased our hybrid set, the last thing to do is to install the 1/4 inch overlay UHMW, and that's really super easy to do. All the inserts are already pre-installed into the skid plate for you. So basically, it's just a matter of getting it up into position, lining up, and bolting it on. Okay, so that takes care of the first piece. We're going to leave it loose, get the second piece on, and then we'll tighten everything all down. Okay, so there's two spots that are a little bit different on this rear piece. It's the very back two mounts. The one is a common mount with the aluminum. So we need to pull these bolts out. And you're going to replace the regular washer with the M8 or the cup washer with the 8mm hole. And then the other two spots that are a little different are the very rear holes, and they're just taking a shorter bolt. It's a different nut insert in the plate since the frame's boxed in that section. Okay, so once you have all the hardware started, basically you just want to make sure that all your cup washers are going to sit down in the counter bores. We're all looking pretty good here. Yeah, that all looks pretty good. So at that point you can just go ahead and tighten everything down. And there we are. That's the full installation of Ricochet's 3/16 aluminum skid plates along with our 1/4-inch hybrid set. So it's 3/16 protection, front to rear, left to right, and then we have the 1/4-inch overlay. Like I say, this is a little bit more of a difficult machine to install, just the fact that there are no factory mounting points since everything is riveted on from the factory. So there's a lot of room for things to, you know, just rotate, get out of alignment and whatnot. So it's a little bit more of a tedious installation, just getting everything all lined up to where it needs to be, especially, you know, with the floorboards having the common mount there. But if you take your time, it's not too bad of an installation. I'd probably plan on about 4 hours or so for this one, all said and done. Like I say, it's a little bit more involved than some of the others. Just mainly you have to drill out all those rivets and whatnot to get the stock stuff off, and then, like I say, not have any factory mounting points for the Ricochet stuff. It is a little bit of a cumbersome installation, but just take your time, you know, leave everything loose. That'll give you plenty of opportunity to go back and get everything all adjusted later and not lock yourself into positions. So that's it. This machine has aftermarket A-arms and trailing arms on it, so I'm not doing the A-arm skids. We do have a separate video showing the installation of those though. They're pretty straightforward. It's just clamps, and then some different bracketry for the rear. But like I say, it's not anything terribly difficult, and we do have a video explaining that. So that's it. That's the Ricochet installation on a Can Am X3 XRS. Thanks for watching.